For years, Dog the Bounty Hunter was one of the most recognizable faces on television. With his long blonde hair, black sunglasses, and leather vest, Dwayne "Dog" Chapman became a symbol of justice, the rough-edged outlaw who hunted other outlaws. Fans watched him storm through motels, back alleys, and small-town streets with fierce determination, tracking fugitives while preaching second chances and redemption. But behind the cameras, behind the booming voice and the bravado, something much darker was happening. A story of heartbreak, tragedy, and a man fighting battles far greater than those he faced on the streets. Long before fame, Dog's life was marked by chaos. He spent time in prison, battled addiction, and lost almost everything before turning his life around. His journey from convict to bounty hunter made him a symbol of redemption, a man who believed everyone deserved a second chance because he had needed one himself. But even as his TV show turned him into a global celebrity, the demons from his past never truly disappeared. Over the years, Dog faced enormous personal loss, including the death of his beloved wife, Beth Chapman, whose courage and strength became the heart of their show. Her battle with cancer left him broken and searching for meaning. Then came the controversies, public disputes, strained family relationships, and health issues that raised fears about his future. The man who once chased fugitives across the country suddenly seemed like he was running from something else entirely: grief, regret, and the weight of his own legend. Today, fans wonder what really happened to the man behind the myth. Is Dog the Bounty Hunter still the fearless tracker who never gave up? Or has life finally caught up with him? The truth reveals a man still struggling to balance faith and fame, redemption and pain, love and loss, and a journey that's far from over. Before he became a television icon, Dwayne Lee "Dog" Chapman was just a kid from Denver, Colorado, trying to survive a rough start in life. Born in 1953, Dog grew up in a strict, often violent household. His father, a former boxer, ran the family with an iron fist, while his mother was deeply religious. The two opposing forces, harsh discipline and strong faith, would define Dog's life in ways even he couldn't have imagined. By his teens, Chapman was already spiraling down a dangerous path. He fell in with motorcycle gangs, hustled on the streets, and lived by his own rules. Trouble was always just around the corner, and by his early 20s, he was no stranger to police sirens or jail cells. But everything changed in 1976, when one night of bad decisions altered his life forever. Dog was present during a violent altercation that ended in the death of a man named Jerry Oliver. Though Dog didn't pull the trigger, he was convicted of first-degree murder for his involvement and sentenced to 5 years in a Texas prison. It was in that cell, surrounded by hardened criminals, that Dwayne Chapman began to change. Inside, Dog's natural leadership and fierce energy set him apart. He found faith, discipline, and a sense of purpose. One moment in particular defined his transformation, when he tackled a fellow inmate trying to escape, saving a guard's life. That act planted the seed of what would become his life's calling, the pursuit of fugitives. When Dog was released after serving 18 months, he was determined to make something of himself. But redemption didn't come easy. Society wasn't kind to ex-cons, and finding work was nearly impossible. Still, Dog refused to return to his old life. He got a job as a bondsman in Colorado and soon discovered his gift for tracking people down. His uncanny intuition, street smarts, and sheer tenacity made him a natural bounty hunter. By the 1980s and 1990s, Chapman had built a reputation as one of the best in the business, feared by fugitives, respected by fellow hunters. He chased criminals across states, through deserts and down back roads, often armed with little more than his instincts and a deep sense of right and wrong. But Dog wasn't just hunting people. He was searching for redemption. Each fugitive he caught reminded him of the man he used to be. He didn't just arrest people. He talked to them. He prayed with them. He offered them the second chance he once needed. "Everybody deserves a shot at forgiveness," he would often say, and he meant it. Still, Dog's life wasn't without struggle. Financial hardship, failed marriages, and his ongoing battle with addiction haunted him. But the fire inside him, that mix of faith and fury, kept him moving forward. Everything changed in 2003 when television producer Sylvia Dorsey saw something unique in Dog's story. He wasn't just another tough guy with a badge. He was a walking contradiction. Part preacher, part outlaw, part hero. The result was Dog the Bounty Hunter, a reality show that turned him into an international phenomenon. Audiences were captivated by the man who looked like a rock star but spoke like a pastor. His mix of hard justice and heartfelt mercy resonated deeply. Every episode was a glimpse into redemption in real time, not just for the people he chased, but for Dog himself. But behind the fame, something darker still lingered. Fame magnified everything, the good and the bad. And while Dog had escaped his criminal past, the demons that once haunted him were far from gone. The world was about to see not just the rise of a TV legend, but the emotional unraveling of a man still at war with his past. When Dog the Bounty Hunter premiered in 2004, no one expected it to explode the way it did. Within months, Dwayne "Dog" Chapman became a household name. Viewers were mesmerized by the spectacle, the black SUVs, the handcuffs, the tearful fugitives, and the man at the center of it all, a leather-clad warrior with a cross around his neck and a heart full of contradictions. Dog wasn't like other TV tough guys. He didn't just catch criminals. He talked to them. He prayed with them, offered advice, and reminded them that redemption was possible. His words, "You can run, but you can't hide from the truth," became his trademark. To fans, he was more than a bounty hunter. He was a symbol of second chances, a man who had fallen as far as anyone could and still found a way to climb back up. But behind every larger-than-life man, there was a force even stronger: Beth Chapman. When Dog met Beth in the late 1980s, he was a struggling single father, still wrestling with addiction and the weight of his past. Beth, bold and fiercely independent, saw something in him that few others did: potential. She wasn't intimidated by his rough exterior. She understood it. The two clashed often, both fiery and stubborn, but their chemistry was undeniable. Over time, she became not only his partner in life, but his rock in every sense. Beth helped Dog rebuild himself, piece by piece. She handled the business side of their bounty hunting operation, managed the finances, and often joined him in the field. Fans adored her toughness and compassion in equal measure. Together, they became television gold. Dog, the relentless hunter with a heart, and Beth, the fearless enforcer who didn't back down from anyone. As Dog the Bounty Hunter grew into a cultural phenomenon, the couple's lives changed overnight. Cameras followed them everywhere, from family dinners to midnight captures. Their home base in Hawaii became as iconic as their catchphrases. Fame brought money, interviews, and a platform Dog had never dreamed of. Yet, it also brought scrutiny, pressure, and cracks that fame tends to magnify. Dog's old struggles, pride, temper, and addiction, began to resurface. The pressure to keep up the tough image weighed heavily on him, even as he tried to balance being a father, husband, and public figure. Beth, always the fighter, pushed, back when he faltered, sometimes clashing with producers or even Dog himself. But their fiery love was also what kept them grounded. Despite the fame, the Chapmans never stopped being real. They comforted victims' families, offered fugitives a hand instead of a fist, and often refused to take credit for the compassion that drove them. Viewers saw in Dog and Beth a reflection of humanity, imperfect but sincere. Their faith was central to everything they did. Before every mission, they prayed. After every capture, they gave thanks. It wasn't a show, it was who they were. However, the fame that had lifted them so high also began to take its toll. Lawsuits, network disputes, and controversies, including leaked private conversations, tested their resilience. Dog's family life became tabloid fodder, and some of his children grew distant, Fame, as Dog would later say, was a double-edged sword. Still, through every challenge, one thing remained constant: Beth. Her strength carried Dog through dark times. "Without her, I'd have gone back to that old life," he once admitted. She was the light that kept him moving forward when the world threatened to pull him back into darkness. But as the years went by, that light began to dim. Not because of anything they did, but because fate had other plans. In 2017, Beth received devastating news. She had throat cancer. It was a diagnosis that would change everything: their lives, their faith, and the legacy they'd built together. Dog had faced dangerous fugitives, death threats, and his own demons, but nothing could prepare him for the battle that was about to begin. When Beth Chapman was diagnosed with stage 2 throat cancer in 2017, the world seemed to stop for Dwayne "Dog" Chapman. The woman who had stood beside him through chaos, fame, and redemption was now facing a fight that no bounty hunt could prepare them for. Dog had spent his life chasing fugitives, always believing he could control the outcome. But this time, he was powerless. The news came like a thunderclap. Beth, strong and fearless as ever, refused to let the diagnosis define. Captured something entirely different: a couple clinging to faith as their world began to crumble. In 2019, the series Dog's Most Wanted aired, documenting their real-life battle against cancer. Viewers saw a side of Beth that was both heartbreaking and inspiring. Even in pain, she refused to step back from the field. She still chased fugitives with her husband, still barked orders into her radio, and still found moments to smile through the fear. "This is my show, my life," she told producers. "I won't sit home and wait to die." Dog stood beside her every step of the way, but those closest to him knew he was falling apart inside. He prayed constantly, often breaking down when cameras weren't rolling. The man who once projected unshakable strength was suddenly fragile, scared, uncertain, and lost. Beth, even in her suffering, became his source of courage. "You need to be strong," she would tell him. "You have to keep helping people, even if I'm gone." As Beth's condition worsened, the family gathered around her in Hawaii. Her faith remained unbroken until the very end. On June 26, 2019, Beth Chapman passed away at the age of 51. The news devastated millions of fans around the world, but for Dog, it was as if the light of his life had gone out forever. In the days that followed, Dog was a shadow of himself. He tried to be strong for his family and fans, but his grief was overwhelming. He spoke publicly, his voice trembling. "I've never felt like this before. I can't eat, I can't sleep. She was my everything." For months, Dog spiraled. He confessed later that he didn't want to live. Depression and health issues plagued him. He suffered from high blood pressure, heart problems, and emotional breakdowns that frightened even his children. The bounty hunter who had once chased fugitives across the country now struggled just to get out of bed. Beth's passing left a hole that fame, faith, and even family couldn't immediately fill. But Dog clung to one thing: her memory. "She told me not to let her death stop me," he said in an interview. She said to keep helping people, to keep believing. And so, slowly, painfully, Dog began to rebuild himself. He returned to bounty hunting, though the fire in his eyes was dimmer. Fans noticed the change. The man who once roared with energy now spoke softly, his words tinged with sorrow. But he was still out there, doing what he'd always done, giving fugitives a second chance. Still, grief has a way of reshaping a person. Dog admitted that he questioned his faith for the first time in years. "Why her?" he asked. "Why not me?" The question haunted him. But in time, he came to believe that Beth's purpose, even in death, was to remind him that life was fragile, that love was eternal, and that redemption never truly ends. By the end of that terrible year, Dog began to speak about his grief openly, urging others not to give up. "You can lose everything," he said. "But if you still have faith, you still have something." Yet even as he tried to move forward, controversy, illness, and family tension loomed. Proof that the storms in Dog's life were far from over. After Beth Chapman's death, Dwayne "Dog" Chapman was never quite the same. For decades, he had faced down fugitives, media scandals, and his own demons. But nothing compared to the silence Beth left behind. The woman who had been his anchor through every storm was gone, and Dog found himself drifting, unsure of who he was without her. In the months following her passing, Dog's health began to crumble. He was hospitalized several times for heart problems, severe stress, and depression. There were moments when even he admitted that he didn't want to go on. When Beth died, a part of me died too, he confessed in a tearful interview. I didn't know how to live without her. Fans feared the worst. Rumors spread that Dog was on the brink, emotionally and physically. But then, as he had done so many times before, he clawed his way back from the edge. He returned to what he knew best, bounty hunting. It wasn't just a job for him anymore. It was therapy, the chase, the danger, the purpose. It all helped him feel alive again. Still, his comeback wasn't smooth. Public controversies resurfaced. There were family disputes, disagreements with his children, and online criticism over his decisions, especially when he announced his engagement to Francie Frayne. A rancher and widow he met through shared grief. Some fans accused him of moving on too quickly, but Dog insisted it wasn't betrayal, it was survival. Beth wanted me to be happy, he said. Francie saved my life. We both lost someone, and we found peace in that pain. Dog and Francie married in 2021, marking a new chapter in his life. For the first time in years, he began to speak of hope again. Together, they shared their faith openly, appearing at church events and Christian conventions, using their stories to inspire others battling loss and despair. God isn't finished with me yet, Dog said. If I'm still here, there's still work to do. But even as he found love again, Dog couldn't escape his past. His show had long been off the air, and the fame that once made him larger than life now felt distant. In interviews, he spoke more like a preacher than a celebrity. He talked about forgiveness, purpose, and the dangers of pride. I spent half my life chasing people, he said. Now I'm chasing peace. Physically, he's not the same man he was during his prime years on Dog the Bounty Hunter. Age and illness have taken their toll, but mentally he seems sharper, more reflective, more grounded. The once fiery hunter now moves with humility, aware of how fleeting everything is. In recent years, Dog has shifted his focus toward faith-based work, speaking about redemption, second chances, and the reality of grief. He's become an advocate for criminal justice reform and for helping those battling addiction, a nod to his own lifelong struggles. And while he no longer chases fugitives on national television, his mission hasn't changed. I'm still hunting, he says. Only now I'm hunting souls, people who need to be reminded that God hasn't given up on them. Despite everything, the tragedy, the fame, the criticism, Dog remains resilient. He's a man who has been to the bottom more than once and somehow always finds a way to rise again. Behind the sunglasses, and the legend is a flawed, deeply human man who has lived through the kind of pain most people couldn't endure. Today, at 72, Dog says he's at peace. He still grieves Beth, still battles health issues, and still misses the thrill of the chase. But he's grateful for the life he's lived. I've done things I'm not proud of, he admits, but I've also done things that mattered. If I can help one person believe they can change, then it was all worth it. The world may know him as Dog the Bounty Hunter, but Dwayne Chapman's true legacy isn't about the captures or the cameras. It's about redemption, the belief that no matter how far you fall, you can always find your way back. And for Dog, that hunt will never end.